Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Imereti Agro Zone Greenhouse Cluster Development Invitation for Expression of Interest Industry Briefings. So before we will start the meeting, I will shortly explain the netiquette. Netiquette, yes. So first of all, please submit your questions using the chat function addressed to all participants, which you can find at the bottom of your screen on the right hand. Or raise your hand and our panelists will try to answer as many questions as possible. In order to raise your hand, you need to go to participants, and on the bottom right, you will see the option to raise your hand. Also, please virtually lower your hand in case you no longer have questions or don't want to comment. We are pleased to announce that the meeting will be interpreted in 2 languages. However, due to Zoom technical restrictions, the language channels will have the following allocations: English, and Georgian French, which means that if you want to listen to the meeting in English, you should choose English. But if you want to listen to the meeting in Georgian, you should choose French. Please speak slowly and clearly during the Q&A session for the translation purposes. Thank you for your understanding. We hope you find the industry briefing informative, engaging, and insightful. Also, please note that the Zoom session will be recorded and shared via the EAS EOI website. For technical support, please either use the Zoom chat function or call the number which is indicated on the bottom. Thank you. Now I will pass the word to Mr. Archibukia.
Let me greet you all, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled that I see you joining at this online meeting. Our topic of discussion today will be our main potential beneficiaries, investors of the greenhouse cluster. But before hitting the presentation, let me give floor to the first Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture, Georgi Hanishvili. Floor is yours, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Archil. I believe that this meeting today will be one of the key because within this program, within this EAS, we have the greenhouse development cluster touching the most interesting topic today, which will be interesting to hear the input of the speakers for the development of greenhouse technologies, high, medium, low, and it will be beneficial to get their recommendations that we may consider in future that we have skipped for some reason, that we will benefit for the full development of these projects, and we'll have the same topic from different angles. So time has passed sufficiently to gather the information, to absorb and digest this information. Call for interest has been announced. People are keen to get engaged, and this the further stage will be further developing our understanding, knowledge. I won't be staying for the entire meeting, but in the very beginning, let me say that the government has raised this project to a high level among its key priorities, and it has contributed to the development of this project through its applicable institutions. And this is a statement that the government clearly recognizes this project, wants to see it successful, and is ready to overcome all the barriers that may have been faced in the inception phase or at any other phase, and to do all its best for the success, ultimate success of EAS. If you have any questions within my stay, I'm happy to answer or get engaged in the meeting and discussions. Thank you, sir, enormously for this tremendous support. Let me shortly give this presentation about this particular topic, which is posted on our website. I hope you have seen it already, but to give a brief overview before you ask questions, let me say the following. You may well be aware that Imereti Agro zone as a separate entity has been established for this particular project. Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture of Georgia is the initiator of the project's implementation. As you may well be aware, our project is called Greenhouse Development Cluster Project in Imereti region. Our founders are the Agriculture Development Agency, which is in charge of everything that is done rurally in the country through the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture. As I mentioned, our company was established in 2017, but land plots were transferred to us at a later stage, and acting work was launched in February last year when we signed a consultancy agreement with our consulting firm. This is a Georgian-Dutch consultancy consortium, which is a friendship of Georgian and Dutch companies. Geo Holding is the Georgian side, Transit Holding is the Dutch one, and we have the wide spectrum of directions within this consultancy, and we'll get them engaged. Let me also note that EAS, as a legal entity of private law, is not only focused on this particular project, and after this one is done, it will operate further within this cluster that we're talking about. Let me also say that according to the concept paper, uh, the government, the state will develop the main infrastructure, the core infrastructure, for the and around the mentioned land plots and parcels. Next slide, please. I want to tell you about the land parcels, what type of land plots they are. Next one. Now, on this particular one, before I go to the land parcels, let me say on this slide that to demonstrate the government priority, there is a steering committee established, which is chaired by Gela Hanishvili, who welcomed us and who is the chairman of this committee. And this committee consists of leading ministries. Georgi Kakaridze from the Ministry of Finance, he's the deputy minister. Mzia Georgobiani, deputy minister of Infrastructure and Regional Development. Irak Akakizagirashvili, who is deputy minister of Justice. David Falabeshvili, who is deputy minister of Economy. Otar Shamukia, who is deputy minister of Agriculture. And within this committee, we have Mihail Hiduri, producing Georgia, and also the steering committee includes Agriculture Development Agency head and first deputy head, and others in terms of us and the consultancy. This high representation within the steering committee demonstrates how high is the priority and importance granted by the government to this particular project. I also want to note that a decision that we implement within this project is cleared and agreed upon with the steering committee, and all the relevant ministries have an agreement on that. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, our project is implemented in Imereti region, and it's not a coincidence. It was selected on purpose. Land parcels have been granted to us by the government around Khaltuba and Baghdadi municipalities, within these two municipalities. Now, on the next slide, we see the location of our land plots. This is around Parshana Hanabi village, around in the vicinity of Khaltuba. This is the location, and the other one is in Baghdadi municipality. And we'll have this cluster is developed, greenhouse clusters developed within these locations. Marlaki village, again in Saltubo municipality, but we will not be developing a greenhouse cluster. It will be used for other purposes. Next slide. Now, as I mentioned, our land plots have been selected on purpose, and they are based on the climate conditions, because for greenhouses, climate is important. Though I need to say that logistically, these locations are very good. For instance, in Saltubo, the land plot that we have for main development within our project, which is the largest, it's within 3.5 kilometers from Kutaisi International Airport. It's very closely located from the highway and from the railway. So it has a close vicinity with the marine ports as well, because that's important, because this produce, the end output, will be exported and domestically consumed. So for export purposes, logistic location is very important to have an easy access to export points. Next slide, please. Now here I want to give floor to our expert, Carl. Carl, floor is yours.
Thank you, Archil. As you can see right now, and as Archil already has told you, the greenhouse cluster has been divided in two plots of lands on two locations. It's Kaltubu and Baghdati. The Skaltubu land plot is also divided in two parts, as you can see on this slide. The reason for it that it is not one part of land is that there is a main gas line crossing the land, and also there is a small river in between. So that's the reason that this one has been split up into two parts. In Skaltubu land plot, you see in the left corner that has been dedicated for organic farming. And organic farming has to be separated from conventional farming.
Molecular gato in the corridor because he's trying to get in the camera.
I'm sorry. On the left corner, you have the organic zone, and the organic zone has to be separated from the conventional zone with a buffer of 150 meters. As you can see, we have to try to design the plot of land to use all kind of varieties of techniques of growth technique for horticulture proposal. Starting, what you see the most in Georgia right now are the low-tech structures, and low-tech structures are tunnels. It is just a simple structure from steel covered with some foil, and it just gives a basic protection from weather circumstances. And of course, it's a cheap way of growing inside structures. Low-tech greenhouses are, let's say, a little one step higher. Also, this is a steel construction. They can also are covered by HDPE foil. And most of the time, these greenhouses already have some kind of a heating system. So there are a little bit more possibilities. Otherwise, you find on this plot of lands also the middle tech greenhouses and the high tech greenhouses, and these we are talking about glass houses, and we are talking about foil houses, but then with a stanchion height of, let's say, starting from 5 to 6 meters. High tech greenhouses, you find them a lot over here in Holland, but also in Germany. They are represented very strongly. And what you see in the development in the world right now is that even in desert circumstances, these greenhouses are going to be built over there. And the reason for it is that you can produce vegetable all year round, and you do not depend on other outside weather circumstances. On the EAS ground, also in Skaltubo, there will be located, as you see on the right side, the EAS service ground. And the EAS service ground, there will be located a logistics center, but there will be also located stores for, let's say, tractor services, machinery services. They can sell electrical components over there. So all kind of services that are related to the farmers, the suppliers for the farmers, that everything will be available for them. Underneath it, you see the yellow squares, and that's the HTDC. And the HTDC has been located over here because, well, you do not want to have visitors in between the greenhouses. So it has been located at the entrance and access road of this EAS in Skaltubo. We can go to the next slide right now. There we see the Baghdati land. And the Baghdati land is also split up into low-tech, middle-tech, and high-tech greenhouses. But as you can see, the Baghdati land we dedicated for more big companies. And the Baghdati land is really suitable for it. The land is ready to start. Everything is already on site. That's also for the Skaltubo land. All energy resources are already there. And that's a very important fact, because if farmers want to start on the plot of land, it is possible to start immediately. I will hand the word right now to my partner, Marius Pakker, and he will tell you about the HTDC.
Thank you, Carl. Your Excellency, Archo, thank you for this opportunity. Can I have the next slide, please? Although it is number 13, we hope it's not an unlucky one. First, mentioned by Carl was already the logistics center. I would like to work out a little bit this concept. Not all farmers, when they produce their product, will have the possibility to have packing facilities. So it is foreseen that on a central place in the IAZ zone, there will be a packing and sorting and grading facility. Also, this facility will be equipped with cold storages, catering to different temperature regimes, and also ultra-low oxygen storage in order to be able to store for longer time products. What is the advantage? The advantage will be that in one place, sorting and grading will take place. Buyers and sellers can meet each other on an equal platform.
Excuse me, Marius.
Yes.
There seems to be a problem with the audio for the interpreter. Could you please speak closer to the microphone? Thank you.
Even stay closer than yesterday. Okay, how is it now? Better?
Yeah.
Okay. As I said, it will be a platform where sellers and buyers also can meet. There is another big advantage here, is that we foresee that it will be a one-stop window also for export requirements. So export certificates, phytosanitary certificates, custom clearance, all can be taken place in one place and only in a very short time, because all the different, let's say, government and semi-government institutions dealing with these will be in one place. So it will be very quickly ready for export. Today it harvests, and tomorrow or day after tomorrow it can be in the shops or on your plate. As already mentioned by Archie, The center is located very close to highly crossing west to east and close to the international airport of Kutaisi. So we think by establishing this center, it will be a boost for increasing not only the quality, but also the quantity of vegetables that can be produced in one place. Next slide, please. The horticulture training and demo center is also an important part of the park, the industrial, agro-industrial park. We have noticed during the preparation of our studies that the knowledge of the farmers on, let's say, modern varieties and modern new crops, new application methods of fertilizers, new crop protection materials is rather limited and outdated. Therefore, we establish a horticulture training and demo center where these new technologies or new varieties can be demonstrated, but where the farmers also will be trained on modern growing technologies, requirements that buyers might have, for instance, introduction to global gap, introduction to HACCP, hygiene, and so forth and so forth. Also, there are modules foreseen to be dealing with economic aspects of farming, obtaining credits, microcredits, etc. So it will be a meeting platform between farmers and new technologies and input suppliers, including banks and the like. Can I have the next slide, please? As I already mentioned, the HTDC is centered in the zone on the outside because of hygienic reasons. We don't want, let's say, our trainees spread all over the agro-industrial park, but it will be very much an integrated part of the zone, as only development of modern greenhouses can be done when you have the staff, management, and workers capable to work with the modern equipment in order to be able to optimize or to make optimum use of the modern technology and the investment. With these words, I would like to hand back to Archil for continuation of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl and Marius. The next slide, please. I want to say here with that as we have high volumes and sizes covered, as our colleagues have mentioned, these landslides are including 93 land plots and land parcels, and will have energy consumption in high volumes. You can see that electricity that will be required for these enterprises will be around 100 megawatts per hour. About 40 million cubic meters of gas will be required for the enterprises, and about 17,000 cubic meters of water, drinking water. As I mentioned, land plots are about 93, and we'll have companies that will require optic fiber cables to have internet connection and other needs met. We already have negotiations with the local utility companies that, in line with the legislation of Georgia, have a license to deliver utility services, and these are in gas supply distributing company SoCar Georgia, and we have been negotiating with them actively so that they distribute gas to ES. As for power energy, we have Energy Pro Georgia as a utility company servicing us. So all these connections need to be connected to the consumers so that distributing companies supply this volume of natural gas and electricity, and government commits to bring this the energy, the resources to our premises. We have power energy very close, and we'll have a linkage from Salzburg. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this is the infrastructure that we have been talking about. the government commits to arrange or all this infrastructure so that greenhouse investors don't find it hard to raise funding. And let me list what is implied in these communications apart from natural gas and power energy. This entire land will be leveled so that greenhouse investors manage to build greenhouses. The surface will be leveled. Also will ensure both external and internal roads to be built within years, and 2 years will have about 10 or 7 meters of width or 5 meter in length, some more, some less. So depending on the requirements, we'll arrange that. It will be fenced, it will be protected. We'll have video monitoring cameras and systems. We'll have a lighting system. Energy resources I've covered. It will be delivered to the particular land pools and land parcels, and farmers will be able to have a connection point right at the land plot to natural gas and power energy utility linkages, water supply systems to the to these parcels. This is already incorporated in the general plan, and this drinking system, like drinking water and sewage, will be also delivered. We have no central sewing system in the region. At the IAS, we'll have a central sewing system and European type filtering and treatment facility. Everything that we're talking about will be of European standards, and that's our reference point. And we require that investors meet this requirement through their supplies and technologies. Also, let me add what my colleagues have mentioned, that at this land port, we'll have a logistics and sales center. And one more important aspect and segment is the training and demo site and center. Next slide. As I mentioned, Imereti Agrozone is not only a project implementation unit. After developing this infrastructure, after you build these greenhouses, after we have this training and demo center and logistics and sales center, after all these enterprises get up and running, we will be service provider. As a one-stop shop principle, we will be rendering these services to all the enterprises within and outside the IAS locations. Over 2,000 producers are in the region that have agriculture land plots, and we believe that they will become members of the cluster, and we will be servicing all these cluster members through one-stop shop principle. And let me now give a list of all these services that businesses will benefit. Infrastructure that will develop at this land plot. It's a huge infrastructure setup, and it will need to be maintained and protected, and we commit to do that. Maintenance costs will be, and the service will be on us as a limited liability company. Each member will have a fee to pay on the grounds of the technology they use, but all the maintenance and operation costs will be on us. We'll also have a one-stop shop principle for producers to get import and export services. Now, I'll list some of them, and we will be delivering them directly and through our partner organizations. Import-export is within the domain of the customs department, and they will be present within our one-stop shop principle. Equally important is certification of the agricultural produce. Regulations are becoming tighter, both in Georgia and overseas, that we perceive as our export markets. We will be giving you an opportunity to certify your products for domestic or international purposes, so that every cluster member, not only 93 businesses that we have on our location, but over 2,000 producers that are in Imereti region will have to certify their products to export their outputs on the European markets. Significant service that we'll have is access to finance and legal services to make sure, I mean, the most important for business, doing business in Georgia is access to finance. Legally, if a company is not well set up, if the accounts are not properly done, it's very hard to gain access to funding that we are referring to. This is not only local banks, but international financial institutions, the IFIs that are willing to allocate large volumes. And we'll be delivering legal and financial consultancy. And I covered that as well. Energy resources was the next one I covered. We did have discussions with local producers that some have greenhouses, but vital for them is waste management. Now, regulations have become tighter on waste management. It's hard to manage this aspect by individual farmers. So we'll have a centralized waste management system. We'll assume obligation on waste management for every cluster member. Equally important is the technical consultancy, and we'll continue this practice. In IAS, we'll be providing a technical consultancy. The hardest for Georgian farmers is access to finance and technical consultancy. That's what we're lacking in the country. That's why we will be able to deliver technical consultations to local farmers on the construction, on the economical applications, the various aspects, and this will be not only through Georgian agronomists, but also by leading agronomists from overseas that we have within this years. And it's one of the key aspects for the training center. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we have all these services represented at IAS. What we offer is the following. We are offering this to all of you present in this meeting. Now, I'll explain how you should participate in the development of the greenhouse cluster. As I mentioned, this 220 hectares of land have been divided into different zones and sizes, but this is a very tentative division. Ultimate division will be based on your proposals and suggestions, because we already have interested individuals. Some are saying 1 hectare is the small for me. I need more than 20 hectares or 10 hectares. So these divisions will be made on the grounds of this, and it will match your needs and desire, and you'll be able to either acquire or lease or rent this land from IAS, i.e. from the state, because we are the state company. We represent the state company. What's the price attached to this land plots? What's the sales price and what's the leasing price? This price is unknown to us at this point in time. When we'll complete the submission of bids for call for interest, we'll have the third party auditing And by autumn, when we'll have the second phase of the bidding, when we select the winners, this audit company will be setting the price on the grounds of the location, high-tech location, different pipelines like for gas or power energy or any other consumption volumes will be taken into account along with other infrastructure needs. Depending on the zone of the land parcel, the price for sale and leasing will be different. As I mentioned, the services that we plan to deliver should be accessible and affordable tool. Prices will be relevant so that every business manages to benefit the services. This may be different depending on the prices. That's every size and type of business benefits. Now, on the second slide, on this particular slide, I want to give floor to Eberhard, who will take floor now.
Thank you very much, Archo. Your Excellency, dear participants, my name is Eberhard Brothage, and I have been advising IAS for almost a year now as a financial expert. I'm glad to participate in the industry briefings, and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have to me in the question and answer session later. Archo already spoke about the element of finance, how IAS aims to be a self-sustaining one-window services provider. As project advisors to IAS, we have looked at the financial necessities of the overall project, and we realized very early on that the access to finance, both debt and equity, is crucial for the successful realization of the IAS greenhouse cluster development project. Now, to start, the Georgian government offers many special credit programs, micro-lending, subsidized lending extended to the agricultural sector in Georgia. Also local banks, which we have spoken to and which are present in some of the meetings, provide loans to the agricultural sector, although on a somewhat limited basis. The project advisors, therefore, from a very early start, engaged with the international financial institutions and development agencies cooperating with Georgia. And there's a very long list of them. Virtually everybody from around the world is working with Georgia, supporting Georgia in one way or another. We spoke to these institutions to identify international financing options for loans, for grants, for subsidies, or for technical assistance. For our discussions with the banks, international financial institutions, and development agencies, we developed high-level business plans for pilot projects. And you see the pilot projects that we specifically looked at on this slide here. These include the facilities previously mentioned by Archel and my colleagues Marius and Karel, but also exemplary high-tech greenhouse project, middle-tech greenhouse project, and open farming or organic farming opportunities. We have found in our discussions that all international financial institutions and development agencies spoken to are very supportive of the IAS project and have expressed an in principle readiness to extend loans, grants, or technical assistance. We have documented all of this in the final report, to which you have gained access via Tresorit. And on an ongoing basis, looking forward, IAS will be happy to provide the respondents with access to these institutions. And as we mentioned earlier today and more extensively in yesterday's briefing for the training center, we also see the training center providing training in how to very simply write a loan application, because in order to obtain a loan from a bank, you have to provide a loan application and explain your business. Next slide, please. Let me explain that in some more detail. We looked at the scale and the business models. Setting up for vegetable, fruit, herb, or flower production, and all of these require investments. Before the production starts, the land needs to be bought or leased. The greenhouse needs to be built. Equipment needs to be bought and installed. And on top of that, once everything is ready for production, you start with the seedlings that need to be nurtured, sometimes over many months long periods before the produce is ready for sale, which is when money comes in again. This means that a farmer needs to finance the capital expenditure and on top of that have access to working capital finance. We calculated these requirements in high-level business cases, which we introduced to the banks, international financial institutions, and development agencies. Based on the very positive responses we received, I'm happy to say that from my perspective, so to speak, the doors are open at these institutions for applications from qualified farmers to support profitable projects set up within the EAS project. All of the banks, the international financial institutions, development agencies are very, very familiar with the EAS project and also our feasibility study and the thinking that went into it. We have also identified opportunities to attract financial investors to EAS, which could provide additional financing, either as mezzanine capital, which is not that widely used in Georgia. It is a combination of a loan with equity elements, or even as equity providers. If you would like to read further details of the work that we performed, please visit the finance sections in the final report provided to you via the Treasury link. And of course, I will be available for questions later to address particular aspects from a banker's perspective regarding the potential financing of the projects in the EAS land. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to now hand the floor back to Archel.
Thank you, Eberhard. Next slide, please. Well, the call for interest, I want to say a few words. You all know this process pretty well, but every potential interested individual has the time by April the 30th, may submit their bids and interest. We will be considering and processing this information, and by end May, we will be having our scope. It's non-obligatory expression of interest. What it means is that it's non-obligatory. All the suggestions and interests that will be submitted will not be legally binding, i.e. they are linked with some financial sources, like if you expect some actions to be taken. So we expect not only proposals, suggestions, and interests, but also your ideas, requirements, or your project development suggestions. Why we're doing this? Now, this is potential investors study. We want to study and scrutinize your needs. What's your scope? What do you want to participate in? And then on the grounds of your needs and demands, we'll come up with proper and right terms and conditions, and we will be officially announcing a tender, and we will be having financially secure and grounded proposals and suggestions. And we will be announcing it officially and internationally by September, and that will be grounds for selecting potential investors for these land parcels. This is the entire process divided into two. The first one that we are doing now is expression of interest, non-legally binding, and we will be considering your ideas, suggestions, proposals, interest. And the second phase, official call for interest, will be for each particular land parcel and agreements with each individual investor. You've already seen, and everyone who is present at this meeting here, everyone has seen Annex 2, Tender Annex 2, but there will be 4 additional annexes to be filled in. We did simplify these to the maximum extent so that you don't find it hard to express your interest. We're not demanding anything out of ordinary to get your ideas. But let me still request that if you have seen these annexes in the Q&A session, could you please ask those questions in the Q&A on how to fill this template so that your interest is submitted. Please raise hand, please write to us online to the email address indicated on the website or here within this Zoom meeting. It is very important for us to have your clear ideas expressed. We hope that we'll have questions in the Q&A session, and if you have not seen those annexes that will need to be filled for the ultimate expression of interest, could you please read them and get in touch with us so that you submit on time. Every question that we get, either by email or here, we respond each one of them, and we publish those questions in the frequently asked questions section so that you know what is our answer to that particular one. Next slide, please. The same process explained further here, so we skip this one and go to the next one. This is evaluation process. Now, as I mentioned, our expression of interest is a study of potential investors. This is non-legally binding, so we won't be scoring anyone. If we look at the next one, next slide, I'll tell you what will be the criteria that we'll be assessing and evaluating that will be crucial for this project and stage. Well, of course, it's important. When you submit your proposal and interest, you need to indicate your partners in the template. These partners may be within the company, the founders, or they may be as a consortium. Of course, we highly value experience and background in doing the business that you intend to. It's important to see this background and experience. Investor may not have experience in the greenhouse production, but he or she should indicate who will be the partner, the experienced partner, or the one who has technical expertise, or if he has none, then will be able to deliver this technical knowledge. This will not be free, or you may also alternatively find a partner and will deliver a consultation and will clear things up there. As I mentioned, experience is important. You may not have it, but you may get a partner who has it. The second criteria that we will be evaluating your expressed interest is that As government wants jobs to be created for local residents in particular, it will be one more criteria, new jobs created within this enterprise. That will be the criteria for evaluation. And apart from the volume of investments that you intend to make and the timeline for investments, we will be evaluating this particular jobs component. It's important that expressed interest is delivered in short time so that investors produce within the greenhouse and we substitute imports and we increase our export volumes. And lastly, we will be matching the strategy of the government expressed and voiced vision and strategy for the development of agriculture. As I mentioned, at this point in time, there will be no scoring, there will be no winners, no losers. It's done for this particular phase to prepare you for the second, for the following stage. And at that following stage, we will be getting your official interest. At this particular stage, at the first stage, we will be clearing things up through consultations, guidance, and advice. Everyone willing to participate, could you please explicitly state what your interests are so that by the stage of official call for interest, you get prepared appropriately. Next slide, please. Well, that's, I guess, all. I now want to request you all to get engaged and become active in the Q&A session. Don't hesitate to ask a question because it's very important for us. What worries you? We need to clear things and issues up at this stage so that we maximize your quest for knowledge. Thank you so much, and we expect your high engagement in the Q&A session.
Yes, before we go on to the Q&A, I will just shortly explain the rules. You can refer your questions and or comments in the Zoom chat, which you can find on the bottom of your screen. You can also refer your question and or comment by virtually raising your hand. As I said earlier, you can find that in when you go to participants, which you can also find at the bottom of your screen, and then you can find the raise hand button, which is on the right side. Please virtually lower your hand in case you no longer have questions or don't want to comment. And please mute yourself after you have commented and have raised the question. So please feel free to ask the questions, anything that you might be interested, we are ready to answer. Thank you. Please, Georgi, I saw you raising your hand.
Georgi,
you're muted, I think. Go.
Sorry. I've submitted a couple of questions, for the information need, in the chat that supposedly somebody will read out. But can I refer to the logistical center questions that I have? Is to Mr. Archil Bukia, please. Is the logistical center considered to be a collecting logistical sector? Will it collect the produce from the low and middle tech greenhouses that will be allocated at the EAS greenhouse cluster territory? That's the first question. Can I just count it down, a couple of them, please? And the way we have been considering was the thinking of years on the packaging house availability that is supported by UNDP at the logistical center. So the greenhouse producers could have the packaging facility possibilities available at IAS. These are the two questions, please, at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Guru.
Madloba Georgi.
Thank you, Georgi. Let me tell you, logistics and sales center is one of the vital components for the development of this project, because most large, high, and medium tech greenhouses don't have coolers or different warehouse facilities. So yes, answer is the logistics center will have a consolidation center idea and concept behind it. It will not only collecting output from the existing greenhouses within EAS, but from outside EAS as well, that will be members of the greenhouse cluster, and it will be possible to consolidate this output within this logistics center. Now, what they currently have is that they produce small quantities and they have direct interaction with an intermediary where they sell their produce. So prices are respectively low because they don't have high volumes and they cannot deal or interact with large buyers. So as they have lower negotiation power and that they deal with the intermediaries. Now, the logistics and sales center that we'll establish within ES, we have another session for auxiliary services at a later stage, and we will be discussing within the Zoom on those aspects. At this stage, it's hard to explain what will be the type and format of this logistics center in the West, in the developed countries. These type of logistics centers are in terms of cooperatives, and like when the greenhouse producers themselves establish these type of logistics centers as a cooperative. In our case, it all depends on the call for interest, on the bids, on the interest that will say submitted. Within the logistics center, we'll have warehousing facilities, packaging warehouse, and sorting warehouse. These kind of entities will be established. In Georgia, this kind of cluster development aspect has a framework agreement associated with it, which has been signed between the Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture on the one hand, and UN system organizations, UNDP, UN Business Development and Facilitation Organization, FAO, UNFAO, and International Migration Organization, IOM. All these entities have signed this framework agreement on raising the competitiveness of Georgian entrepreneurs. And as we're talking about increasing competitiveness, we are developing clusters. They have already established this packaging cluster. We already signed an MOU and we have become a member of this cluster because packaging, because sales market for the packaging business will be our EAS and our members. So our entrepreneurs will need to package their products properly for the export markets. We have already an agreement with this packaging cluster, and we will be giving the opportunity to them and their cluster members to get their presence and footage at EAS, so that not only our beneficiaries benefit, but also over 2,000 producers in Imereti too, as well. Thank you. Other questions? Please be active, because we need to clear issues up that have not been covered in the presentation.
Archil, thank you for the answer. I see that Georgi is raising his hand again, so please.
Yes, please. Before, there is a silence from other attendees. Let me use the opportunity and ask the question to Mr. Marius Paka. What's the practice in Netherlands? Do the logistical centers like this produce any kind of statistics for the greenhouse producers, for the growers, farmers, in order to somehow plan their productivity for the next year? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Georgie. Yes and no. If you're talking about, let's say, cooperative selling organizations or packing and storage facilities, they can play a role in facilitating a platform between buyers and sellers. And part of these responsibilities is also the planning of production. It's logical that a lot of production from, let's say, low-tech greenhouses will come in a certain period of time, and that the medium and high-tech greenhouses will have to produce in the off-season, let's say, where the small-scale farmers cannot produce. So yes, it can be used for coordinating these things, but it is not necessarily. It depends very much on the attitude of the farmers, whether they are willing to cooperate, whether they see the advantages of cooperating, and also the willingness of buyers to deal with these farmers groups or farmers associations, farmers cooperatives, whatever you would like to see. So yes, it can play this role, and we think that especially if you want to shorten, let's say, the distance between producer and consumer, that these large-scale opportunities to form this platform between buyers and sellers could play this role. But it is not necessarily always the case. If you are a large farmer, you might prefer to do directly your dealings with the buyers. But if you are a lot of smaller farmers, this could be an excellent opportunity, yes.
Thank you.
Marius, thank you for the answer.
I would like to add maybe, we're not talking only for the users of this packing center, of the farmers which want to establish themselves in the IAZ in themselves. As we know, in the surrounding villages, there are over, I think, 5,000 farmers who also could make use of these facilities. So it's not exclusive to the zone.
Thank you, Marius.
Thank you, Marius. Once again, let me urge you to be as active as possible to ask questions to our participants.
Yeah, Archel, I have a question. I have done these type of establishment of agro-business parks in several countries. And one of the first questions people say, ownership of the land. The land is from the state given to IAZ, which is a semi-state organization. What about the ownership of the land? Could you explain a bit on that?
Well, indeed, we have received a lot of questions of this type. Mainly foreigners are asking these questions because it's under the Georgian legislation, foreign individuals may not own Georgian agricultural land, but within EAS it won't be the case, because organic law says that foreign organization or a legal entity whereby foreigners own more than 50% of shares, they may have land plots in their ownership and entitlement. For that very purpose, there is a land management agency under the subordination of the Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture. Investment plan needs to be submitted to this agency. On the grounds of this plan, government issues a decree on the grounds of which foreigners may have a title ownership on an agricultural land parcel. We already have negotiations with this agency, and we will be facilitating any foreign individual or organization to smooth this process. This is all about agricultural land. Now, I also want to say that high-tech greenhouses will be not open ground, but that may go beyond the agricultural land status. There is no limitation there. So any foreign individual will be able to own agricultural and non-agricultural land parcels. We have preliminary agreements with all the relevant government agencies on this.
Thank you, Arjo. Clear.
Thank you, Archel. Please feel free to talk. You can just unmute yourself and ask a question. If it's like a obstacle to raise a hand, it's not a problem. Write it in chat. Okay, Georgi.
One more thing that I would like to clarify from IAS, I mean, like, what is the vision about supporting the farmers in technical and technological aspects of their project developments? Will IAS provide the possibility to them, and will it be like, if it's positive, will it be like obligatory for them to apply to IAS, or they can have it, I mean, produced on their own? They may have their own consultancy. I mean, and it's also, I mean, refers to the legal and financial structuring possibilities for their projects, like business plan creations and whatever. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I have the similar answer, yes and no. For the later stage, well, it depends. Interested individuals will submit their interest expressed, and we will be digesting these ideas. But at a later stage, when we have this official kind of interest expressed, there will be no obligation for them to benefit or to use these services. They will be having this opportunity to raise knowledge, to acquire this knowledge through the HTDC, or to hire agronomists of different qualification, both domestic and international, through us, because we'll have the expertise, we'll have the agronomists, we'll have the database and rosters, and they'll select, the farmers will select whoever they want to deal with. Same applies to legal or financial consultations. This will be voluntary. We started this project and we understand it very well, that it's not only development of land for the attracting interest of investors. As I mentioned, access to significant finance is limited in Georgia. We will be delivering this service to ease this for the domestic and international funding. If the farmers require our services, they benefit and they are guaranteed to get this access. And the legal and financial consultations will be delivered along with agronomical and technical. We create the opportunities. Each land parcel is your potential to be delivered on. Every service that we render is for you to improve your businesses. So please benefit of them.
Thank you, Archil. So again, if anyone has questions, feel free to ask. We'll be waiting.
Somebody has to mute himself.
Yes, I think. Yeah.
Okay, can you read out, please, the questions in the chat meanwhile? Huh? That should be also important to the farmers that would like to invest and build up their greenhouses.
Okay, there is one question in the chat, and that's about the infrastructure development time frame. So the question is, what is the infrastructure development time frame? I guess this will be addressed to Archil probably, even though it's not specified. Yeah.
Fair enough. Let me tell you, we have a development of our EAS in the visualized into two phases. As for the infrastructure, after we announce the call for interest in autumn, and each land parcel will have an agreement attached to it with potential investors. Depending on what is the plan of the potential investor to develop its business, depending on that, we will be visualizing the infrastructure to be linked with that state. We commit to every investor to will lease out or acquire the land parcel, will get the utilities connected after all this is dealt with within the land parcel. Be that natural gas, power energy, water, whatever, that will be linked, and the rest will be done on time, depending on the schedule of their development. So that's why it's vital to us to get your ideas and plans. The actual work will be done after we understand through your expressed interest and suggestions on what is your plan and vision for development. So we commit that no one will be left without infrastructure. A lot depends on your intensified action. Archil, one of the respondents is asking, does the plan have incorporated lighting in Saltubo? Of course, this maintenance is on our side. It will be protected, and lighting is outside lighting and outdoor lighting is provided. Entrance will be arranged in the European manner, pictorial and other kind of screenings will be done. And it's very important to protect the plants. Roads will be lit, video surveillance systems will be installed, and our territory will be protected in terms of plants and infrastructure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Archil. Again, if anyone has questions, please. Because the other question in the chat, I think was answered already. I can read it out and maybe we can see if it was answered, or we can maybe add something on it. So the question was, will EAS supply with the required infrastructure the private greenhouse development individual projects in case of the project initiator would like to start the greenhouse project development, e.g. from spring 2022, or the private initiators have to wait for the infrastructure? There was the question. Whoever wants to answer that. Yes.
Well, I'll answer the questions. Well, within ES, we have sufficient resources. So if anyone wants to operate from spring 2022, we have water supply, power energy, natural gas, all the resources are there. Spring, this year it cannot be done, but next year, spring 2022, it will be possible because we'll be announcing officially in the autumn this year. So we commit officially to meet the needs and demands of these businesses.
Understood. Thank you, Archel.
Well, dear participants, as I say, there are no questions or you are shy or hesitate. We're expecting plenty of questions. Otherwise, we'll call it a day. If anyone wants to make a comment, remark, or question, please feel free. But as I mentioned, let me repeat, you may also write to us. We have our email indicator on our website, and feel free to write to us at a later stage if you wish.
Okay, thank you, Archel. Yes, if there are no more questions, I guess we could say goodbye and thank you for participating. Okay, I think there is one question. I think Irakli wants to ask a question. Please, Irakli.
Yeah, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So there was one question about if are there any financial instruments considered at ES, like leasing of the equipment or greenhouse facilities and obtaining loans and etc. Thank you.
So
well, I would request our financial experts to respond to this question, if possible. Eberhard.
Thank you very much, Archel. It's a very good question. And yes, we looked at that traditional financing methods like bank loans, but also leasing facilities or the factoring of receivables. As I said previously, access to finance for agricultural businesses in Georgia is somewhat limited. So it is very important to look at as many sources of finance as possible. Obviously, it depends on the structure of the overall business. As Archel said, the land can be purchased, so a purchased land could serve as collateral and could be mortgaged to a local bank. Equipment can be granted as security, receivables can be granted as security. We looked at all of these components, and in particular in the startup phase of a business, it may be very important to include multiple sources of finance. I'm happy to say that we spoke with many of the Georgian banks. I know that one of the banks is present here in the meeting today. We spoke with all of them. I believe they understand the project, they understand the opportunities. And as Archel said in his comment on EAS supporting the financial, legal, business development aspects, IAS will be very happy to provide the contact details and, so to speak, open the doors. This also extends to subsidized lending and microcredit programs that are supported by the government of Georgia. But perhaps I could ask the local banker present in the meeting to say a few words from his perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eberhard. I think the question is addressed to Shota Gongladze. If he wants to answer, he feel free to. Okay.
Well, good afternoon. Let me greet you all. I don't have a question.
Okay.
We will be considering the application and we will be getting engaged in the project directly or indirectly in terms of our funding. We like the idea of greenhouse cluster. We will do our best to support each participant financially and that through our startup support system. We have the various products like startup support, agriculture support, and others. So we'll match the needs and we'll look into the needs. We'll be approaching you with questions if we have in future, and we'll cooperate. Thank you. Thank you, Shota. He represents TBC Bank. We are interacting with TBC and other commercial banks in Georgia. And we have a huge market for banks to finance. So they'll be very active, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I
guess we have no more questions. I want to thank you all, our potential investors, first of all, those who found time to attend this meeting. This is the second meeting in a row. The first one was held yesterday on Training and Demo Center. Today we met you, principal investors that will be developing greenhouse infrastructure. We'll have two more briefing the meetings, and you'll have an opportunity to attend those two. You will have on the 12th of April, we'll have businesses interested, potential businesses like logistics center, packaging, auxiliary services, power energy, gas supply, etc. And we'll have the last sector briefing on the following day, and then we'll have domestic and international banks and audit firms that will be auditing and evaluating the land. Thank you all. Particularly, I want to thank our experts and consultants that are engaged in our project and have helped us a lot. It's with great merit to them that we have reached this day today. And I thank them all, and I thank you all. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you.
Goodbye. And please be in touch in case of any questions.
Thank you for your time. We're ready for any questions. Thank you.